The very best thing you can do for the whole world is to make the most of yourself. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the Athlete Podcast sponsored by Sports for Champions. Today I'm proud to be joined by Team GB's Michael Afilaka. How are you today, Michael?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here. If we could start at the very beginning of your career, I believe you were very sporty in school and that kind of set the standard for the rest of your career.
Oh yes, I started athletics and I used to obviously run in some cases bare feet because you just enjoyed doing it. And then I realised I was just slightly better than most of my colleagues.
And then was it like school sports days and things like that, your way out in front, that kind of thing?
Yeah, school sports days and then try out for the school, which is when I knew I was good because I was part of the relay team. And then we started competing again at the schools, and that's when I started taking it serious.
There you go. And did you enjoy school in general?
Yes, as a prefect.
I know you've been very academic, and so you've gone on to achieve quite a lot in academia. Can you tell us a bit about how your approach to school maybe in them early days?
So it's from an academic point of view, I come from a family that is steeped in education. My dad was a doctor, my oldest brother's a doctor, sister's a pharmacist, accountant. So there was a precedent that had been set. So it's just a matter of what are you bringing to the table. So from an early age, schooling was, and I was also a prefect as well. So I was a bit swotty as much as I didn't want to be, and so it went hand in hand really, because the idea of obviously competing for the school and also being prefect both in primary and secondary school, that obviously helped school being not just enjoyable but most importantly to be needed in some format by the school to either serve or to compete for them.
Coming from an academic family, was there some sort of pressure to maybe follow down that route? Because I imagine it would be maybe quite difficult to tell a family of doctors and pharmacists that I want to pursue athletics. It might not be sort of the clearest route to kind of financial stability, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So first of all, my parents never really did tell me to do anything. They were quite laid back. My dad was extremely laid, almost too laid back. My mom was the opposite. My mom was the Margaret Thatcher, whereas my dad was just leaving to it. But he was a big sports fanatic. My dad was. He loved sports, and as I got older, one of his proudest moments was me medaling, when I got older, at the World University, and that was a proud moment for him. And I was actually taken aback at how much he loved that, So as I grew older, I knew, yes, you weren't necessarily told to do it. It was just a standard. I was very inquisitive as well. I read a lot, from a young age. We grew up in an household where current affairs was the order of the day, so you expected to. It would be good if you can watch the news, not like you wanted to, at the age of 9, 10, 11 or 12, but my dad was a big fan of keeping abreast of world affairs and what was going on around you.
So obviously you're a coach now. How important do you think it is for athletes to sort of keep their ear in school? Because I think it can be quite tempting, especially when you're training so much out of school, to not really put that much importance on it, and you just think, well, I'm just going to be an athlete, it's going to be fine. But I think it's more and more it's important that athletes actually apply themselves in both areas. Yeah.
So one is an extension of the other because they're both formative. They're both demand structures. They're both bounded by discipline, strict rules and regulations of how you do it, when you do it, how much of it you do, and in some format you get tested at the end of both of it. So I always say to people, so every single one of my athletes, bar two, in 18 years of coaching, have all been graduates of some sort. Right. And of those two, they'd made that decision to stop education before they came to me. So, but if they were with me, I would have encouraged them to do it because is a good thing to fall back on, because you're not going to do sports forever, and not everybody's going to be at a level where you're making a financial gain to stop you from getting a 9 to 5 job. So it's always a good thing to have in your back pocket, and most importantly, the discipline of one helps the other as well.
It's tricky, isn't it? You're only ever one serious injury away from having to...
Exactly. So I work with a number of footballers as well, and that's one of the things that I slightly feel sorry for them, because you're in academy until you're 16, then you either get a scholar or not, and then the day you're told you don't get a scholar, you either go around looking for other clubs to go to. But the one thing is, you can't just walk into an office and apply for a 9 to 5 job, because you've probably given up your O levels or A levels to do that. So if you can keep it going, it does help, because one of my uncles used to say, it might be a piece of paper, but it's a piece of paper that gets you through the doors.
Yeah, definitely. Taking us back, we'll probably come back to a little bit of that, but I think you were 14, 15 years old when you kind of picked up by regionals. Can you tell us a bit about how that first came about?
Yeah, so I was running for the club, John Newman Beagles, when I was 16, 17, and until then I just sort of like ran in schools, enjoyed it, and then I started training formally at Newham in 1989, and started running for Newham in the National League, which is a big deal. British League is a big deal in athletics, and they've got divisions 1, 2, 3, and 4, and running for Newham Division 1 with the likes of Daley Thompson and Tony Jarrett and those guys, it was like, wow. I remember running against Tony Jarrett and thinking, I just saw him on TV, absolutely just starstruck. That was a big thing for me, and I think that gave me that motivation to like, okay, I actually can be good at this, and that's what got me started. And then running for Essex is part of it as well. So the idea is you run for your counties, and then you have inter-counties, and that is a combination of still the same people, just wearing a different vest. But coming from Essex, that was an extremely competitive county. So if you made the Essex team, you were good. So to be in that county, running for that club, really was a great starting point, and that's really what set me up until I went up to university.
Kind of a golden era for British sprinting around then, obviously. With Christie coming through. Why do you think that was?
I just think success breeds success. Obviously, it's cyclical as well. You would find, depending on what sport you look at, you will see a spate of people come in different events or different, genders. So at the moment, we've got, a lot of our girls are doing very well, but the boys are not necessarily. 10 years ago, it was that. So that era was probably one where we had a lot of good men and women, the Sally Gunnells, the Colin Jacksons, the Linford Christies, and that was very rare to have them, not just, from a gender point of view, but also a variety of different event groups, which we're not necessarily very good at, and obviously, not forgetting the guys that were just tailing off then, the distance guys, Vet, Cole, Cram, and that was a battle, because, to make the British team meant you were 1, 2, 3 in the world, which we've just never been able to re-establish. So it was a good era, extremely competitive, and those guys were 5, 6, 10 years older than me, so it was a good trend to follow, if I can say that.
Yeah, it's a good proving grounds, and a good place to learn as well.
Exactly.
Speaking of which, around that time you actually went to university, probably at the tail end of that. Was that a tough decision to make, or was it fairly straightforward?
No, it was just a normal progression. It was just a normal progression. I finished secondary school, then I chose to do a BTEC, which, engineering, looking back at it now, I was like, why? But then, so I did my first degree in Salford, and then transferred to Staffordshire University and did sports science and anatomy, which was very good. It was, I was in my own element, really. So as an athlete, a bit of a local superstar at uni, I was running, and it was a very, very, very lovely time.
So you took the transition well in terms of moving out from home, moving up north. Obviously, is that your first? You'd have gone around for competitions, presumably, but I imagine that's the first time out of the family home as well.
Actually, no. I've been out of the family home because so basically, my parents are of Nigerian extraction. So my dad worked here for a number of years, and then he moved back to Nigeria. So my primary school, 5 years of it was done abroad.
Right.
So when I saw I moved back, my parents didn't want to come back because my mom's about it's too cold and
she's got a point to it, especially today.
Exactly. So coming back to England 5 years later, 6 years later in my case was I had to grow very quickly, if you know what I mean. I lived in a family house. You had my uncles, you had my aunties. My parents came around every other month, sort of thing. So going to university really wasn't my first hurrah, or that's being on your own and burning the toast and putting too much sugar in the baked beans. You know
how to boil an egg.
I boil water. So
That's great. Wow. Do you think that gave you a sort of made you a more well-rounded person? Because a lot of people, especially athletes, who basically they live quite sheltered lives, they're kind of wrapped up in cotton wool by the parents, taken to training, taken home. You've kind of done it a different way there. Do you think that made you a better person and an athlete?
Definitely. So by the time I was 16, 15, I could cook, multiple meals. I was comfortable. So going up to university and funny enough, it's a good question actually, because I remember going to university and I didn't want to live in student halls because the idea of living with 15, 16 other people and plates being left in the sink for weeks on end didn't appeal to me. So I ended up living with 2 or 3 people in my first year, and by my second year, I think I only had one other flatmate. So from a very early age, that independence was there. And that idea to, cater for myself. Now, don't get me wrong, my mom played a big part in obviously training me enough to know those things in early age. And so it was just a seamless transition, by the time we went to uni, and that was pretty good. And so when I got to Stoke, I was living in an house rather than halls. I've never lived in halls, but whereas some of my mates, they were living with 20 other people, you go around visiting them, you're like, oh Lord, it's like you could tell it's the first time they left home, So I was well prepared for that.
Yeah, so you're almost living professionally beforehand. I think that probably came in handy because you're actually travelling back to London to train at that point.
Yes, so I would I trained with Linford Christie, the great Linford, who had a Grand Slam in those days, which was Olympic, European, Worlds, and Commonwealth champion. Something that's not been done since, and so I would go back to London the weekend and I would do my sessions, with another coach, John Briley, lovely man, pleasant memory, and he would look after my sessions, and that's what I did for like 3 years until I finished in Staffordshire.
How did that work in terms of your studies? Did you find it easy, or was it discipline?
It was discipline. Don't get me wrong, I was still a student. We partied a lot, and but I just had to do a little bit more because you're an athlete as well. So when guys wanted to go out, you probably had to, in my first year at Staffordshire, I had to drive to Manchester for training. So I might be going to training, or when they were partying, I might be sleeping and recovering. So the athletic side of it was good, but one of the things that happened that changed my life really in Stoke was, for a small university then, they had like a massive repository of sports journalism. So I just used to go into the library and just read a lot on physiology, psychology, and some of the other stuff that relates to sport, because I just wanted to know more. So that just wasn't helping my sports, it was also helping my degree as well, because that's what the degree really was made up of.
Definitely. And then leaving university, were you straight into nationals, full-time athletics?
Yes. So between 97 and 2000, I just made my mind up to really give athletics a good go. I'd had my operation in 96, having been told of the trials, I wasn't 100%, which was very disappointing. And coming on the back of 93, 94, 95, where I got my first international, and then I gone on to win a medal in 95 at the World University. That was really good. Made the national final in 94.
Where was the medal win?
Japan.
Can you talk us through that? Must have been an amazing experience.
It was, yeah. I mean, I anchored the British team. I wasn't a quick starter, so they had to put me in a leg where it was reactive, and I remember that the coach saying once you get it, you've got to run for your dear life, and that's what I did. But the Americans weren't chasing us; they were already in the lead, so that helped. But yeah, that was unbelievable. Really good achievement. At that stage, Britain hadn't really won a lot of medals in that event, so it was good for to do that, and that really, is what I took into '96, thinking I was on the verge of being in that relay contention for '96 team, and it never came through. So. And then when I finished, like previously asked, I just wanted to. So I trained in America, trained in Canada, and the idea was go and train and then come back home to compete. So, but you also, by 2000, I had to train with or be mentored by the last 4 Olympic champions, and so I was exposed to a lot of not just good athletes, but also good coaches as well, and that I would later realise was a good grounding for what I do now.
Having spent so much time with Olympic champions, what do you think differentiates them with the kind of rest of the crop?
Mindset is the first thing. The ability for them to be clear on what they need to do when it matters. That's important. Their commitment and application is yes. It's just the idea of, this is my job, this is what I enjoy doing, this is what I'm really good at, and I'm going to do everything that matters legally to be the best is one thing that stands out with all of them, But then on the day, they have this ability to be quite clear on what they want to do. They're so clear on what the process is. So the best people find a way to flush out the fluff.
Focus.
Yes, and that in itself is an art. It is an art that needs to be practiced, and I don't think is done enough. People talk about sports psychology, but the reality of it is, on the day, when it matters, can you turn it on? Can you exhibit what you're good at? What you practice for every day, what what you enjoy, and those guys have that in common.
It's probably no more evident than in sprinting, where you're distilling 15 years of training into 10 seconds, 20 seconds of running.
I know people say that. People say 10 seconds of running, but it's the bit that you don't see is if you have a race at, I don't know, say 10 o'clock, your day really would have started at 5.
Right, is that to get yourself into the right
yes,
level?
So you would get up, go and get something to eat, have your kit check, then being taken to the track, then you warm up, then you go into the call room, and the call room is where you literally are sitting next to the guys you're competing against, and you can smell each other's breath. It's that close, and not most people don't want to be in there because of that stage, and then you get marked out. So that's the bit that you see. So physiologically, there's a lot of research that shows that a lot of medals are lost in that process, either in the way you get ready, or in your warm-up phase, or just beforehand, because the energy that's been dissipated. Some people get over-aroused, some people can't get up for it, some people, the nerves are just so much, they just completely override your ability to think straight, and so, yeah, you're right, it's so one of my favorite sayings is, practice doesn't make perfect. What training does, that 15 years that you talk about, is practice makes permanent. So good practice makes good permanent. Bad practice makes bad permanent. So it's about that 15 years. Yes, it only ends up being 10 seconds, but the more you can make the action, what you call in psychology a condition reflex action, something you do without thinking about. Brushing your teeth, driving a car. Yeah, muscle memory. the more you could do that, the easier that 10-second becomes.
It makes sense. In terms of those Olympic champions, you said sort of mindset differentiates them. Something we talk about a lot on the podcast is talent. I imagine among the top ranks, the talent is fairly similar. Obviously, you get a few outliers, but do you see that in your coaching now? The talent level can be fairly similar, but actually it's the mental side of it that's taking people above the rest.
Yeah, so when I speak to people about this, especially kids and other people that are either in sports or not in sports, I always, to keep it simple, so there are 3 traits that a sportsman will have. You've got your talent, you've got your work capacity, and you've got your elite mindset. So of those 3, the only trait that doesn't change is the talent. Like you don't go to Asda and buy talent patches. They just don't exist. So you get what you get. And then, so that means the rest of your journey is your ability to develop an elite mindset and your work capacity. And that's it. Now, ideally, you want those 2 to go hand in hand with the talent. They take over from the talent. And so when you look at Ronaldo, you look at Messi, those guys have been around now for 20 years. They work very hard. The elite mindset is developed and the work capacity is very high. But then they've got the talent to go with it. So I always say to people, junior excellence shows potential. So going back to your question, yeah, you're right. The talent might be similar, but those guys have got that innate ability to work at a very high level, very sensibly and progressively, coupled with an elite mindset that's made up of different components, and one of them is sports psychology. There's the way you move, there's the way you live, your lifestyle, there's your training, there's the exercise physiology, the different 6 or 7, 8 things that make up your elite mindset. But sports psychology, you're right, is one of the most important of that lot.
There you go. Another thing that I think probably could play a factor is luck, and I think that's normally played out through injuries. I know that's something that you struggled with towards the end of your career, and I think it was 1996 actually that you developed sort of the bad one. Can you tell us a bit about that and how that came about?
Yeah, so I was coming off in 95. I got a medal, and I really wanted to go in 96. Trained hard, and I had this nagging pain, in my groin. At the start of the season, I just didn't think anything to it, but I was still running and I was still training. And then it culminated in me getting to the Olympic trials, and warming up, the pain got worse, and I decided to run the first round, and just it was awful. And I went to see the doctor, and he was like, the reason you can't obviously run is because you've got something called Gilmore's groin. And like, what's that? And so, the man that came up with this injury is called Gilmore, but the groin, you've got an hernia, like a sportsman hernia. And he said, you can keep on running, but you're not really going to be that good.
Is that because you can't put the power down?
Yes,
right,
yes.
Okay.
And the pain could be excruciating depending on what part of the race you're at, what phase. And I just decided to end it then, and then go and have an operation, which is what I did, towards the end of the season. So how did it impact me? Oh, very disappointing, because I was very confident going in there that I would have been in the mix the way I was running, not just a year before, but even with the injury earlier on, I was running quite well. I got to about 10.4, 10.3 made the team that year, so that was painful, but, how do you deal with it? I bounced back. That was what led to the decision to give it a good go in 97 and travel abroad and train with some of the best coaches in the world.
Yeah, and that obviously laid the groundwork for the rest of your career.
Exactly.
Does that impact the way you deal with the sprinters that you have that you're coaching now? Because obviously in sport, I think most people run with injuries. Most footballers play with injuries. It's part of sport, and I think if you get a little niggle, you can't just go straight to the massage table. Like, you need to push through it sometimes, but obviously there's a balance there, and I imagine it's quite difficult to actually say, right, maybe you do need a couple of days off here, maybe we'll take you for a scan, and then some people, I imagine, just want to push through it all, and then you can end up with something bad. How do you kind of manage that?
Yeah, so what makes athletics and sprinting different from all of the sports is, first of all, is the embodiment of all of the sports, your ability to move your feet as quick as you can from A to B. But the forces that you're producing in sprinting is unattainable in no other sports. It's 2.5 times your body weight in a straight line, and that force is enormous. So you're right, you can have niggles, but they're not niggles that will stop you from doing that. So right now, we in my team at the moment, we have doctors, physios, and everybody works together, collaboratively to make sure that the person is able to do the work. So the kind of niggles that we have, the sport is so fine that if there is anything that stops you from developing that kind of speed or generating that kind of speed, it will show up very quickly. And we don't really want to get there, because we know you can have acute injuries if you keep on running as fast as we would like to run. So it's managing that as well, and that's a big part of what I was saying earlier about the exercise physiology, about the elite mindset, which is regeneration and recovery, and that incorporates your medical as well. So what are you doing pre-training, during training, and most importantly after training to recover?
Is that something that's become more important sort of nowadays as opposed to when you were running?
People talk about it more nowadays, but it's been around for years. The Polish and the Russians and so on, they've been doing this for years. We're just late to the party.
Wow.
Yeah, so everybody talks about Arsene Wenger. Oh yeah, he stopped us from having fry-ups. Okay, you weren't meant to have fry-ups in the first place. We just didn't know the importance of nutrition. So sports science and science has been in sports for as long as the Polish has been doing it, for the 30s, 40s, 50s. The Russians, when they were doing it, legitimately. I've been able to prove that, if you manage the body, then you can use detailed data to get the body to its optimum, and so it's more prevalent now with most clubs. We have a lot of foreign influx as well of good managers and good groundings and good cultures coming in. So, I suppose we have no option now than to do what it is that they've been hired to tell us, which is that they're in because they're good. Pep Guardiola, Arsene Wenger, Mourinho, one of my favorite coaches, they're bringing in cultures of not just that discipline, but they're maximizing the role of scientists to do what they do as well.
So in 1997, you went abroad. Can you tell us a bit about that experience? Was it a bit warmer climate?
It was warmer climate, but I'm laughing because yesterday night my little niece was teasing me because he studies at LSU. And he was like, "Oh, Uncle, I don't believe you went to Arkansas." And I'm like, "Yeah, I did. I went to our training in Arkansas, which was very lovely. The Americans call it the poorest state, But it was an eye opener. The weather was guaranteed, which is good, compared to, waking up in Forest Gate every day, So it was good. The training was really good. It was a kind of training I'd never done, before. The American mindset is slightly different. So that worked really, really good. Enjoyed it. Came back, ran relatively okay, and then the following year, I trained in Canada. Same thing. Canada's weather's not as guaranteed as it was in America the year before. Trained down there, came back to compete, and that's one of the downsides of training abroad is your coaches don't come back home with you. They probably got the thing they're doing. And then in 99, I ended up in LA, which was, that I remember extremely well because you had like Maurice Green, Ato Bolden, Jose Marie Perec, with one of the greatest coaches in the world in John Smith. And that was a real eye-opener at UCLA. That was really, really good. I enjoyed my time. Hollywood was down the road, a lot of partying, which wasn't great. But at that stage, I think I was more of a student of the sport rather than the goals of being an athlete, because the injuries were just non-stop. And like we were saying earlier on, you've got to be mentally strong enough to deal with that, to be able to go back to where you were. And then I came back home in 99, had a season which was good, probably my second or third best season. And then in 2000 I decided to give it up and do my masters.
So just going back a little bit there, obviously you're in America, you're in Canada, you're soaking up all this information from some of the best coaches in the world. How does the American approach differ from the UK?
Oh, the biggest thing is the structure of the collegiate system is what feeds every single athlete into a professional setting in America. So You cannot get into the NBA unless you go to college and spend a year. You can't get into the NFL unless you've been in the college for 3 years, and so on and so on. So from a very early age, young athletes get into the transactional world. So you leave them at 17, 18, you come to university, I will give you a scholarship, and in return you give me your talent. So they know how to be accountable from an early age. And I think that's one of the biggest things they have over us. Whereas in England, sports is just very loose. If you do it and you're good at it, that's fine. If you're in the football setting, you're in an academy, that's good. But if you're not in an academy-based sport, so you're on your own, really. You're not really accountable. Neither is there any kind of consequence to your behavior. So that's what I found very quickly, was a lot of the young American kids were just more mature, more accountable, trained harder earlier on, had success a lot more earlier on. The competition is intense out there. It's week in, week out. So as a pro going out there, you could run in some of the collegiate meets with other pros, but the mindset of the coaches and people you're training with is one where they've been in that setup for 4 or 5 years already, and they're only 21, 22. So they get it very quickly and learn how to survive, and it's way more professional. And most universities spend a ton amount of money on sports facilities, coaching, coaches. And so I was able to tap into that, of course, while I was on those trips.
Yeah, that's standing you in great stead, obviously, for coming back in 2000 and starting your own coaching journey. Can you tell us about how you first got that off the ground?
Yeah, so I was asked to help out with a couple of talent days in the early 2000s. I did that once a month, then it became once a week. It was very successful. The TID days, based in Loughborough, and that really went well.
So that's talent ID. That's basically you'll be watching runners and you're looking for somebody who's got.
Yeah. So most of the coaches will. So let's say you got the Eastern Region Talent ID. They will do a talent day where they spot the good kids from the Eastern Region, and then what you do is you reward them by exposing them allegedly to good coaches, so that themselves and their coaches will come for the day. And you take a look at their drills, you talk to them about nutrition, you talk to them about other aspects, and you start introducing the league concept to them. That's the idea of the TID days. But then it became every Wednesday, which really ended up being good. So you were seeing them enough to now start making a difference. So although they were done regionally, when you didn't see those athletes nationally, you've helped in some format to play a part in their journey. And that led to me setting up my own elite squad in 2005.
What are you looking for in a young athlete?
Obviously the talent, the ability for them to enjoy it, and then you start impacting the idea of application, commitment to the sport, trying to get them better technically. That's a big part of it in whatever you do. And so the combination of all those is helping them in that journey. So I describe it as cutting the journey short for a young person, is you showing them what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and how much of it to do.
Yeah, so you're kind of bringing them up to a level that probably it took you a little bit of a while to piece together all the different aspects.
Experience is someone cutting the journey short for you.
Yeah,
that's how I see it.
That's brilliant. And is there any sort of main themes that run through your coaching that you could perhaps share with us today?
So everybody was very strict and disciplined, but I think we all crave discipline. Doesn't matter what you do. I think we have to be guided by structures and boundaries. I think we've got to exist in a consequential environment and relationships. If not, we can go on the M1 and tunk it down at 120 miles. Yeah, just be broken rules. So. That's what I think are those things that you also need in sports: the discipline, the respect for the sport, the regard for people that are helping you achieve those goals, the day-to-day routine of bettering yourself and owning your skill is something that I think sport teaches you. It's a leveler that is separated by people that can consistently do the right thing day in, day out, at the highest level correctly.
That's it. It's the decision making day to day,
Yes,
isn't it?
It's
not the performance.
It's not. I normally say to my guys, there's no an OD and pick a mix. Yeah, you don't go in today. Don't go in tomorrow. I'm feeling ill today. I'm not feeling it tomorrow. Okay, it's not about feeling it. It's about doing what is needed. Some athletes and sports people want to do what they want to do, not what is required to be successful. They're two different things.
I guess it's your job to point that out to them exactly what that is.
100%. And they might not like you, but it's the job of a coach. So when you look at the successful coaches in football, in athletics, in basketball, the best coaches are slightly dysfunctional in a way. They're tough, they're detailed, they're demanding, and they're knowledgeable. Yeah,
almost passionate to the point of obsessed. You see a lot.
Yes, but continuous excellence that makes the skill permanent. In a way, it's got to be obsessive.
Definitely.
You just might not admit it. Yeah.
until after your career.
Until after, yeah.
You look back and thought that might have been a bit much.
Yeah, but when you look at and that's why when you look at it, the best coaches, the best successful coaches are old. Because of. So I have a belief and I have a saying that you almost need 2 Olympic cycles to actually arrive at your philosophy.
Right.
That's 8 years already.
Yeah.
And that is you done well at the beginning, you burnt a lot of people, you made a lot of mistakes, you've tried and tasted success. You need 2 Olympic cycles to then say, actually, now I think I get it. And then you can start replicating that. And then you can start adding things to it. But so when you look at football, Ferguson, old man, Van Gaal, old, even some of the younger coaches, Mourinho is 60 years old, everybody forgets he came at 47. So in athletics, when you look at what I call the Mount Rushmores of the sprint, for example, you've got, the two Jamaican coaches in Glenn Mills and Stephen Francis, they're in their 60s. John Smith is in his 70s. Bobby Kirst is in the 70s. It's not a young person's sport because you just need that time to accrue what you need to do. Michael Holloway, University of Florida, he's 63. He's a good friend of mine, so I call him medium old just to annoy him. But yeah, these are guys, they know more, they've forgotten more stuff that they know, but they're extremely successful because they just know what to say at the right time with different people.
Looking forward to the future for yourself. Obviously, you've had an illustrious career. Is there anything in particular you're aiming towards in terms of your coaching career?
So I would like to coach preferably gold medalists at the World's Olympics for Britain. I say for Britain because I coach people from other countries as well. But that would be special. Especially in the sprints, preferably in the 100. But if I did in the 2, I wouldn't say no. I think that'd be good. To mentor somebody through their whole pathway of life. I do a lot of mentoring right now with young people, and like I said earlier on, I see it as my job to cut the journey short for them. Don't go into that pit. This is what you're going to find. You do get people that want to suck it and see, but that's not always the best way to progress. So be able to mentor individuals as I get more successful as well, just to produce people that can come after me. That gives me a lot of joy as well. I like doing that. I like educating people. What are the aspirations? I try and impact the same knowledge of my kids right now. And I've got a 17-year-old and I've got a boy and I've got a 14-year-old girl that's going on 54. because she thinks she's like my mum. So but yeah.
Have you got any aspirations for them to go into athletics, or are they more the education?
It's funny you say that. I've actually never instilled anything on them, but the boy is obsessed with athletics, and he's also a very good footballer as well. And I didn't know this until I played against him. I was like, oh whoa, I didn't know you were that good. But they do sport. They do sports in school, and they're taking it serious. The girl never wanted to do anything, and then the last 18 months she's now doing rugby, hockey, and when she came home and said, I play rugby, I had to take a look at the head and say, but you okay? But she does, and she likes it, so she does rugby now. But and that hasn't really come from me. But growing up, they were around a lot of the kind of big stars I was coaching, the Jeanette Quachis, the Adam Jamilis, the Ashley Nelsons, the Tommy Randall. So they saw them, and then I work with footballers as well. So they've seen a lot of those guys, and some of them are England internationals, and they're like, wow. So it's very difficult maybe for them. I wasn't expecting them to turn around and say, I want to do ballet.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah.
But how could it not rub off?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So psychologically, yes, it would, because my son's obsession with athletics is not normal.
Yeah.
And I've never taken him to a track to go and train. He follows me to training sometimes, but I've never literally said, oh, there you go and run. But he is obsessed with it, and he's actually quite good at it, funny enough. So
that's the best way, isn't
exactly.
it? If it comes from you rather than being told by someone else.
Exactly. And then we try and keep them on an educational path as well, which is, work hard in school. I said to my son the other day, you actually do know you don't pay any mortgage, you've got no kids, you've got no bills, so your only job is to study. He's like, oh, actually, I didn't think about it like that. Okay, now you know. So, so life is easy.
Yeah, for now. It's all uphill from here. Well, you say about educating people, you've definitely educated me and the viewers at home today, so thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much for having me.
The final thing I'd like to ask you, we talk a lot about advice on the podcast. Is there any advice in particular that would give to a young person looking to start a career in sport? It might not even be sporting related, it could be just about life.
So without sounding too heavy, one of my favorite sayings, so I'm always accused of having a lot of sayings, so one of my favorite ones is happiness doesn't come from what you get, it's a byproduct of what you give. So whatever you choose to do, you got to get up in the morning, you got to need to want to give to that thing. Not want. There's a difference between want and need. As long as you want it, it's optional. When you need it, then you'll be successful.
I have nothing to add to that. That's perfect. That's great. I think we're going to have to leave it there, because that's a great note to end it on. Thank you very much for joining. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thanks a lot for having me, and really appreciate it.
Brilliant. And thank you for everyone joining us at home. We'll see you next time. Cheers.